I'll stop there. Right. So, it's a novelization of my experiences on the psychic frontier with Quentin Tarantino. Right. If you recall, one second. Right? I espoused that he said, oh, I'll say I have a daughter, number one, because he's a sexual degenerate, right? And number two, because he can say, oh, see, like my daughter's a little girl, right? See how insane he is? Right? And so I didn't respect it, and then I did respect it, and he lied on the mercy seat. This thing that we're doing here, right? This clairvoyance remote viewing thing, it's a divine celestial thing. Right? And so that's why I never looked up his children for 6 months. Right? Of course. That's right, like, oh, you say something to me in this way, in this special divine way. Right? I trust you. Right? And of course it's all bullshit. Right? It's not like it's all bullshit. All of it. Can't stress that enough, right? Trey Anastasio thinks I'm insane, right? That's, right? He's cast his allegiances with evil, right? Because of Quentin slandering me, right? Just like he slandered me to everyone, because he didn't want to admit that he played Russian roulette with his career. Right? Because if he had sent me a letter, right? If he had told me what he wanted to do, then we wouldn't be in this situation. Right? Then when he stuck his nose up in my letter, I would have said, oh, it's just theater, right? Or I wouldn't have even asked for his autograph. Right? But I wanted him to say what he wanted. Right? This game, like it's a game to him. That's the point, right? And so I have a lot that I could say about that, right? But what I will say, right, is that if he just rides this lie, right, and we never reconcile, right? And he says, oh no, Brian's insane. The daughter, like my daughter's a sweet, innocent little girl, right? That he's going to compound so much bullshit, so much malignancy of thought upon him and his family, right? That all the bullshit that he said about his daughter is going to become true, right? Because he's going to hover over her, right? Like a helicopter, right? To make sure that she doesn't do any of the things that he alleged she does. Right? And she's gonna like reflex, right? She's gonna do drugs. She's gonna become a meth whore, right? And get pissed on for $500 an hour, right? You think that interests me? Like making those claims, right? You think that's like what I want to talk about, right? You think I give a fuck what Quentin Tarantino does, right? If he had never fucked with me at Con, we wouldn't be here right now. 100%. Right? If he would have just let me go to work, right? Oh gosh, he's lost his mind, right? And these are the two positions, right? These are the two positions, right? He's a fucking sick, degenerate, evil man, and I'm not well in my mind, right? But if I'm not well, right, then there's no reason he shouldn't release the conversation between him and Robert De Niro. Because it has nothing to do with me. There it is. Right? Whose face is that? Robert De Niro. Right? Any man who submits their mind to Quentin Tarantino in this way doesn't respect themselves. Right? And so what I'm saying, right, which I said it before, right, is that Quentin's kink, right, is to remote view through other men, right, while they're fucking the women in his life. That's like where the daughter thing all originates, right? That he put his women on me, right? Right? So that he could watch me masturbate, I guess, like while he's seeing his women seduce me in that way. Because, right, he puts, right, there's two women, right? Right, Daniela, so fine, so delicate. Such pretty little feet. Eh? Right? Daniela, as well as Badass Cinema, whatever her name is. Right? Allison, her name's not Allison, but that's what they told me. Willow. Right? That he puts them on men, the men in his life, and then the actors, right, remote views through their eyes, right? What's Leo DiCaprio got to say about it? How much did Daniela close her eyes while she was fucking you? Right? What's Austin Butler got to say about it with that other one? How many times did she close your eyes while you were fucking her? Right? Sick. Pretty fucked up, you ask me. Right? And so when I didn't give him what he wanted, right, he entered into this conspiracy, right? To make me kill myself, 100%. To make me say, oh gosh, he's so mean. Oh, it's so overwhelming. Oh no, bang. Right? And so now that I haven't done that, right, he's descended into real palpable black magic evil. Real evil. Right? And so this is my point when I say that he failed his initiation. Right? That he could have paid me nothing. Right? And then I never would have said anything about, right, Brad Pitt winning an Oscar for beating up his wife on an airplane. Right? I would have never said anything about, Quentin having a really fucked up psyche. It's none of my business, right? It's none of my business. Right? But, right? He made it my business. That's my point. That's my point, right? And so this game, right, this thing that he does, right, that he thought that he was like so fucking clever at, it ain't got nothing to do with the movies or money, right? You see the board, right? That wisdom, right? Wisdom is priceless. There's no, right? Right, what's this? Same image, that's right there. Right? So he wants to play the psychic mind game, right? Psychic occultism mind game, right? And I admit he went way farther than I thought anyone was capable of. Really sick evil. He meditates on evil. That's my point. That's my point, right? His wife, so fine, so fucking fine, right? That he could look to her and say, all of my wisdom has led to you, right? And that would be romantic and beautiful, right? You're the mother of my children, right? I venerate you, right? He doesn't see anything that's good in his life, right? He's a sick, dangerous man who meditates on evil and destruction and power, right? He's lied on the mercy seat to me for over a year now, right? That this thing that we're, okay, like, I'm not going to go on and on. I'm going to recite some Shakespeare and then I'm going to go because I've been going for several minutes now, right? But this thing that we're doing here, right, it is a connection to a divine understanding, right? That life is not an accident, right? That nothing emerges haphazardly. It's not a haphazard convocation of chemicals in motion. Ultimately, you always end up at the line in the sand. Right? Words. Right? Which came first? Thought or motion? Right? There's the line, the horizon of your ignorance, and you have to make an inference of understanding. Right? So, I choose to say that thought came first. That Platonic forms is the true philosophy. All things reside as idea. How does this relate to Quentin? What I'll say is that while attempting to read my book, which is somewhere, here it is. Earlier, right, lecture on Masonic symbolism. It's a really good book. That I felt his evil, 100%. He doesn't want me to be wise. Right? But it's all the same. Right? And then again, this is the shallowness of it all. Right? So if we say that thought precedes motion, then space is structured in a particular way. That the conscious field, right, which is the expression of giving, God's love, the divine light of deity, etc., exists in a perpetual state of rest, omnipresent in every cubic centimeter of space, equally distributed in terms of volumetric pressure. Right? Embedded within the divine light of God, is an infinite complex nesting of polyhedra. This is one example. Right? This is a compound of 40 tetrahedra. Right? 20 pointing up, 20 pointing down. Right? And so, if you look, right, to this, right, here's an example. Right? That's a subdivision of 42. Right? That all of these things are all nested inside of each other. Right? So perfect in their expression, right, that they dissolve into seeming non-existence. And when the divine light of God exerts its knowing upon that hologram, right, it is a quantum hologram of electric potential and probability, right? And when the divine light squeezes it, right, it exerts pressure, right, at the angle or angles, right, angel or angels, right, upon the subatomic structural scaffolding, right? And as it does that, it collapses, right, until it reaches the interior geometry of what's inside of here, right? It's called the vector equilibrium, which is actually up there on paper, but you can't see it. It's just on a frame, right? And so as soon as you hit that, right, it then collapses through the platonic solids, right? Dodeca, octahedra, cube, right? Tetrahedra. Right? And through those five, polyhedral arrangements, right, closest packing of spheres, right, we see a mirror for all of the molecular chemical structure of all of the elements on the periodic table. Right? So, right, God from Ein Sof to Malkuth, right, it's from outside in. Right? It's an exertion of pressure upon the hologram, right? And as it's collapsing towards center, right, it becomes pregnant with electric resistance, right? As friction grating against itself, right? Until the friction becomes so great, right, the electric resistance becomes so high that it can no longer remain in inert space and erupts into incandescence, right, as matter, right? First photons of light, chemical elements, atmospheric strata, mineral, vegetable, animal, man, right? And so the specific angle, right, if we say within here, right, is the geometric lattice underpinning structure for all of manifested reality, right? And then we close this in a sphere, and I cast a circle around it. That's called a great circle, right? So any degree on that great circle can represent a pressure condition upon the quantum manifold, right? Which is to say, it can represent a vector of manifestation out of the abstract divine idealized form into a manifested measurable corpuscular shadow, right? And so that's, 360 opportunities, right, for each great circle, right? And so you have an infinite variety of great circles which can wrap around this form, right? My point being, right, that God the Father alone, right, manifests all of physical manifested reality, right, through the omniscience, the dignity of its thinking, right? So all instances of psychic phenomena, right? The things that people refer to as psychic, clairvoyant, telepathy, telepathic, telekinesis, psychokinesis, thaumaturgy, remote viewing, right, are the same things, right, that people refer to as magic, right? And sorcery in centuries past, right? So all instances of clairvoyance, all instances of magic, right? Of telepathy, right? Of remote viewing, of sorcery, of magic spells, right? Right? Is the mind of the adept, right? Tapping into the non-locality omnipresence of the divine abstract intellectual quality, right? Which manifests all of reality through its thinking, through its exerting a pressure upon the quantum hologram, right? The highest expressions of said clairvoyance, right, of said expression of extrasensory perception sees the adept behaving like God, right? And so you can heal the sick, right? And you can see through other people's eyes, right? And far easier, right? Though far more evil, right? On the worst level of this, right? You can destroy people, right? So uplift your soul to God. See what's good in your life. Like, comment, subscribe, share. All the best. Have a good weekend. Stay cool.